Hi, it's Dwyer. It is November 15th, 2024. Just a few minutes before midnight here in California. Let's talk about what happened tonight in the Mike Tyson loss to Jake Paul. Right, I lost a bit on this fight. The fight did not go the way I thought it would. But I did think that the telecast was riveting. I don't think the full story has been told. A lot of this video is going to be speculation. I'm not claiming to have any facts on what fully happened. Right? I thought the event was put together in good faith. I thought at the time that he signed the contract, Mike Tyson clearly thought he was going to win the fight. I thought on the telecast, there's a moment where Andre Ward talks about meeting up with Mike Tyson and how excited Mike Tyson was about going to the gym. Right? Tyson told Andre Ward, yeah, I've been hitting the gym, preparing for this fight every day. Right? So I believe Tyson had the best of intentions. I don't believe this was a money grab situation. But what I do believe is that Roy Jones does really the best job of announcing a fight that we have seen really since the days of Howard Cosell. Right? Jones has figured things out during the telecast. The tip-off is Mike Tyson's mouthpiece. Now I know the public is just going to view this as 58 being too old. Right? It's going to overlook the fact that you have several guys in boxing history, among them Sonny Liston, who we have pretty good information was in his late 40s, early 50s. And he was still an effective heavyweight. Let's remember his last fight, he beats up Chuck Wepner. Wepner required stitches after that fight. Right? And that's after the Leotis Martin fight. Right? Right now, you have heavyweights who are, in their mid-40s. Luis Ortiz, for example. And he's still a threat. In the heavyweight division, he went 12 grueling rounds against Andy Ruiz. Right now, I know the public is going to just look at this and say, my goodness, Mike Tyson could barely move. And they had to know that this was a joke fight. Jake Paul knew that he could move away from Tyson on demand. Right? That's how the fight came across. Well, understand, Jones talked about the mouthpiece. I believe there are people in the building who know the truth here. And I believe the truth is, in part, Tyson doesn't move like he used to, but that's a minor story. I believe the real story is that Mike Tyson, in my opinion, without any access to Mike Tyson's medical chart, I'm speculating here, but I believe Mike Tyson has good days and he has bad days. Right? I just want people to understand that, I'm sure there are many people watching this video who have people in their families who have good days and bad days. I'm not going to name names, but there's a famous Hall of Famer, great fighter, who talks about how sometimes when he was entering the ring, he just knew that he didn't have it. And it had nothing to do with the opponent. Right? This guy suffered from sexual abuse. And he suffered from bouts of depression. And would be flat some days. Right? Just wasn't caught up in the vibe in the room. Now here, I believe Mike Tyson fully intended to beat Jake Paul. I believe you see flashes in the first round, right? Tyson comes out, Tyson comes over to him, he's throwing a pretty hard left hook. I thought Tyson wins the first round. But what was disturbing is that Roy Jones starts talking about Tyson's mouthpiece. The mouthpiece at times looks like it fits perfectly in Mike Tyson's mouth. At other times, that mouthpiece seems to have popped out of Tyson's mouth, and it's not like Jake Paul is hitting Tyson in the mouth repeatedly. So then a dialogue ensues between Morrow and Roy Jones. And Morrow says, look, I've looked on films of Mike Tyson. And I've seen films in the past where Mike Tyson's mouthpiece, he's playing with it. And Jones, who fought Mike Tyson within the last 5 years, right? Tyson looked good in that fight. I know they scored it a draw. It wasn't a draw. Tyson wins that fight by at least 3 rounds. Roy Jones quietly says, look, when I fought Mike Tyson, he didn't have this thing going on with the mouthpiece. I believe the mouthpiece is key here. Because I believe, call me crazy, right? Call me crazy. Just understand I've gotten calls in the middle of the night from clients going through anxiety attacks, from someone looking for someone they need to talk to. Sometimes the person's crying. And of all the people in their lives, they decide to call an attorney they barely know, but who they told about their litigation case or their divorce case. Right, folks? Mike Tyson's not himself. There's another tip-off here. Between one of the rounds, one of the guys in his corner is talking to him and is telling him to calm down. Right? I believe Mike Tyson was disconnected from the room. The introduction he gets from the ring announcer is excellent. Right? It couldn't have been better. They call Tyson the baddest man on the planet. Understand, too, the crowd is a Tyson crowd. It's not a Jake Paul crowd. It's a Tyson crowd. But you notice when Tyson walks in the ring, he's flat. Right? He walks in the ring slowly. He's standing there in the ring. There's no glare. There's no energy. I just think he wasn't feeling it. I think Tyson is a guy who on some days would have been energized, but not today. Right? So you had a situation here where this is almost like the Oliver McCall Lennox Lewis rematch. I want to encourage people to go back and look at that film where McCall, who beat Lewis the first time, so he knew he could beat Lewis because he'd already done it. McCall seems to have a mental breakdown in the ring. Here, Tyson, and again, I'm not saying his legs are as good as they were in his prime, but understand, folks, he could barely move compared to his fight against Roy Jones just a few years ago. And understand how interesting it was. Jones, who knows Tyson, after something like the third round on the telecast, listen to Jones's comments. Right, folks, I'm telling you, Jones is telling you a story here. Jones talks about his legs and talks about how he doesn't think we're going to see anything else from Tyson. Because Mike looked tired. Rosie Perez is trying to connect the mouthpiece to Tyson's breathing. No, I think Tyson's having a problem breathing because he's having an anxiety attack. So Tyson obviously is out of his depth here at 58 against Jake Paul. just understand he wasn't himself, right? What typically happens when you're dealing with people who have had panic attacks, right? And trust me, I've had some people who are very close to me, even today, who've had panic attacks, right? Who I've talked with while they're having a panic attack, right? No one's going to talk about it. It's too dicey to talk about in public, but understand, maybe Jake Paul beats the best Mike Tyson at 58. But Tyson today wasn't close to being the best Mike Tyson at 58. Right? I've listened to Tyson's podcast. He had a podcast, Hot Boxing, with Mike Tyson. And some days on that podcast, he's laughing, he's energetic, he looks well adjusted, and stuff like that. Right? There seems to be another side to the story. Right? I believe that side came out now. I believe Tyson is so nervous in the ring against not Tyson Fury, but Jake Paul, that he's biting down on his mouthpiece and he's playing games with the mouthpiece. He has another thing he's doing where he's keeping his hand up around his mouth. And it doesn't look like he's doing so because Jake Paul's hitting him in the mouth. Understand, I lived through the 1980s, right? I don't recall Mike Tyson looking like this, right? Having issues with the mouthpiece, apart from the Buster Douglas fight where the mouthpiece gets knocked out of his mouth, right? I don't recall Mike Tyson having problems with the mouthpiece and looking like he's chewing on his glove or anything like that. I think when Tyson enters the ring and he has a knee brace on, right? He's nervous, folks. He's nervous against Jake Paul. By the time you get to the 5th round, the fight's long over, right? Because Jake Paul knows on demand he can just move away from Mike Tyson. Tyson doesn't have the legs or the drive or the energy level to back him into corners. So I lost on this fight. It's disappointing. I just didn't know enough. I had certain assumptions that didn't exist, right? I thought Tyson was just in a different place. Right? Let me also make another point here. There's a fight in history where Vitaly Klitschko had holograms of different champs. This was back when Joe Frazier was still alive because he was one of the holograms, right? He had George Foreman, he had Lennox Lewis, he had Joe Frazier, he had Evander Holyfield, he had Mike Tyson. Now, Tyson at the time weighed much more than he weighs now. Right? Tyson at the time had withdrawn a little bit from the public. Now, as Vitaly Klitschko on his ring walked by the hologram of Mike Tyson, right? Tyson talks at a volume that is much lower than the other guys. Right? The other holograms, you can hear them. Lennox Lewis says, hey, make history like we made history. Right? George Foreman has his statements. You hear them clearly. Even Joe Frazier, who looks like he had a cane. In other words, Frazier's on his last legs, was more understandable than Mike Tyson, who is talking low. And you saw Tyson with the extra weight talking low, and you thought, wow, Mike seems to be a bit depressed and a bit removed from the scene. Well, understand now Tyson looks to be in great shape. He weighed less than 230. You see him in interviews and he's switched on. Clearly, when he spoke to Andre Ward, he was switched on. Right? Look at that part of the telecast. I'm assuming since it was on Netflix, it's going to be in heavy rotation on Netflix. Right? Netflix knows you have to go through them to watch the fight. Look at that moment with Andre Ward where he talks about Mike Tyson telling him enthusiastically about going to the gym every day and being in training. Right? Well, understand, Tyson on good days looks like he's a world beater. I saw him. I saw the shape he was in. I saw highlights of him preparing for this fight. I saw the hand speed. I saw the movement. I saw the upper body movement. And I thought, you know what? Tyson's going to give Jake Paul 6 minutes of hell, right? It's 2-minute rounds, first 3 rounds. I thought Jake Paul could run but could not hide, to use a Joe Louis phrase, right? Tyson couldn't give Jake Paul more than half a round of hell, right? He wins the first round, but then you notice the energy level is simply not there, right? Jake Paul could move away from him, right? And Jake Paul, let's face it, is not exactly Ali in terms of his foot speed, prime Ali in the 60s. So, got this one wrong. I believe people watching the fight for the first time should listen carefully to Roy Jones. I believe Jones is someone who knows more than he's letting on. Right? I believe some other people, George Foreman, who picked Jake Paul. Right? I believe George Foreman, who talked in terms of Mike having, a goal now and stuff like that, knew that before this fight came along, Tyson may not have had a goal. That Tyson may have been dealing with some emotional turbulence. Right? I don't believe this fight is just a referendum on whether a guy who's 58 can be competitive against a guy who up until this fight was a cruiserweight, right? Jake Paul comes in at 227 here, right? But let's just say he's not tested enough for us to know whether he can fight comfortably at 227, right? The fight's that much of a disappointment, right? But just understand, as a result of this fight, coupled with the Victor Belfort Evander Holyfield fight, you're going to have a whole group of fighters who were chomping at the bit to get back in the sport, to be part of, this series of celebrity fights, right? You're going to have a lot of older people who now are going to realize that venturing into that part of their careers is no longer possible, because you're not going to get Shaquille O'Neal and Gronk attending a fight with a participant who's 58 years old, at least not for the next few years. Right? So I got this one wrong. It is what it is. Let me also make another point. Let me segue to the Katie Taylor fight. I was shocked at the scoring of that fight. I think it's a mistake to just look at CompuBox numbers. And the CompuBox numbers are in Serrano's favor. Right? I thought Serrano comfortably won the fight even without the 1-point deduction that was made against Katie Taylor. Right? I thought Serrano won the fight. But I need for folks to understand that a punch is not a punch. Katie Taylor is going for singles. Amanda Serrano, who hits much harder than her, is going for doubles, triples, and home runs. Right? So understand, as it is, Amanda Serrano outlands Katie Taylor. Right? But folks, understand, the margin's even bigger than that. Because not only does Serrano outland Katie Taylor, but her punches are much harder than Katie Taylor's. So if you see both of them land 10 punches, Katie Taylor's 10 punches typically equal 10 singles. Amanda Serrano's 10 punches equaled a double, a single, a triple, a double, a single. So I don't understand. I didn't understand the scoring in New York. I certainly don't understand the scoring here in Texas. Right? Let me hear your thoughts on that Katie Taylor Amanda Serrano fight. The problem with bad judging, and here it's really striking because all three judges had the same scorecard. The problem with bad judging is it makes it hard to remember what was a great fight. Let me also say, too, watching boxing years ago, I'll agree. You have refs back then who were rough and tumble, right? You can tell that looking at the Rocky movie, where Sylvester Stallone says to Burgess Meredith, "Cut me, Mick," right? Because his eye's so swollen he can't see, so his own trainer cuts him. I know it's fictional, but it reflected the time. It was believable in the 70s. His trainer cuts him so blood can flow out of the cut and he can see out of his eye again during a fight, right? But let me just say, the Amanda Serrano fight should have been stopped earlier, right, folks? The cut was grisly. Understand, had it been stopped, and I haven't seen the judges' scorecards, she would have won the fight on the scorecards because she got off to the faster start. The person who realized it was her trainer in the corner. He was the one saying to the referee, "Oh, that looks terrible." Right, folks? She had a gaping wound here. It was gaping. And, of course, it was caused by a headbutt. They decided to let that fight continue. That was ridiculous. So then you had a Serrano who was at less than 100% because of a headbutt that opened up a gaping cut on her eye that should have stopped the fight. Now, as it is, I believe she still won. But if the scorecards show that Katie Taylor won most of the later rounds of that fight, then that's going to be a tragedy. Let me hear how you scored the Amanda Serrano, Katie Taylor fight. Let me also make an admission here. I saw that Chantel Cameron, Katie Taylor rematch. I made a video here saying, hey, there is no way Chantel Cameron lost this fight. That's the fight where Chantel Cameron knocks Katie Taylor down and the ref missed it, right? Welcome to boxing. And it wasn't counted as a knockdown. Well, I just have to say that many of you here online chimed in and said, Dwyer, you're being tough on Katie Taylor. I had Katie Taylor winning on my card. Several of you had Katie Taylor winning the Chantel Cameron rematch, which I thought was shocking because I thought Taylor, again, was hitting singles while Chantel Cameron, a much bigger puncher, was hitting doubles and triples. I also thought Katie Taylor was excessively holding. Right? Well, let's just say in this Amanda Serrano fight, I have no idea how a judge could find that Katie Taylor won the fight, especially when you factor in, rightly or wrongly, the referee's point deduction. Right? I don't believe judges have discretion to ignore a point deduction made by a referee. Let me close by saying this. I'm watching the Mario Barrios fight. Understand, after Jaron Ennis's last fight, many people are less than impressed. They think 147 is open. Also, there's talk now of Jaron Ennis going to 154 sooner than was expected. So here you have Mario Barrios with a share of the title. And he's fighting Abel Ramos, a guy who I told premium subscribers was a live underdog. Right now, Mario Barrios starts the fight. He's blistering. Right? There comes a time where he hits Ramos. I'm rooting for Ramos. Right? He hits Ramos, and it looks like Ramos's glove touched the canvas. Right? Even now, I'm not quite sure if it did touch the canvas. The ref didn't call it a knockdown. Ramos got a break on that. Right? Understand, since the fight was ultimately ruled a draw, if you're on the Barrios side of the ledger, you should be outraged. You should demand that first interaction where Ramos literally gets hit, stops throwing punches, has a hand down, is reaching for the canvas. Whether he makes it to the canvas with that glove, that's the open question. Right? Understand, because the ref did not call that a knockdown, Mario Barrios did not win the fight. Right? The favorite ended up with a draw with Ramos. Well, understand, Barrios even tops himself. He then knocks down Abel Ramos. Right? Knocks him down. So he's up with the lead. Here's the problem with Mario Barrios. Now, he's a 6-footer. What's he doing giving up his height? Why is he leaning forward and trying to fight low against an opponent who's shorter than him, who's a puncher? Why would he want his head around the pocket? And the answer is devastating. It's because he doesn't have the skill set to lean backwards to leverage his height. He doesn't know how to hide his head. One of his most effective punches is his jab. So, of course, the only way he can throw the jab is by leaning over the pocket. Folks, understand the opening that gave Ramos, who's an underrated boxer. Ramos blows up Barrios' face. Right, folks? If you look at Barrios in the first round, then you look at Barrios at the end of the 12th, he barely looks like the same person. Let me also say, too, that Ramos, of course, knocks down Barrios. Then you get to a stretch of the fight where Barrios looks like he falls apart. Ramos figures out the timing. Ramos figures out that he can counter Barrios, and he decides he's not going to dodge Barrios' jab. So he's getting hit in the face with jabs as part of a deal he's made, where he'll take the jab, punch to the face, if he has a chance at throwing a counter power right hand. Well, let me just say, that's also damning to Mario Barrios, because I'm just telling you, against a great jab, you have Gilberto Ramirez fighting on Saturday against Chris Billum-Smith. I think he has a great jab. Right? Larry Holmes had a great jab. Carlos Monzon had a great jab. You don't have the option of taking a jab from a great jabber, because your face would be busted up. I couldn't imagine a worse strategy against Larry Holmes, to take his jab and then hope to hit him with counters while his jab hand's extended. That's the move Ramos is doing here. He comes all the way back in a fight in which he lost at least 4 of the first 5 rounds, in which he's knocked down at least once, if not twice. Right? Ramos comes storming all the way back in the fight and ends up with the draw. Let's remember, too, this isn't the first fight Barrios has faded in. That Gervonta Davis fight, he has a lead on Gervonta Davis. And then, of course, the dynamic starts to change. Barrios seems to get tired in the later rounds, right? Barrios, whatever punch pattern he has, an opponent's able to figure it out. In other words, this isn't the guy with enough feints to keep an opponent guessing. So just look at Barrios' face, look at his mouth, I wouldn't be surprised if I were to hear that, he has a hairline fracture or something like that of his jaw. His face looked jacked up to me. Now, obviously, I was watching the whole telecast. I was waiting for the Mike Tyson fight. I was waiting for the Amanda Serrano fight. So I have not looked into here online just how badly messed up Mario Barrios was. But that's what you get when you don't know how to use your height. Right? I was astonished. You're fighting Abel Ramos, who has more knockouts than Mario Barrios. And you're keeping your head around the pocket? You got to be kidding me. Right? So while Mario Barrios is a champ at 147, and while he wants to fight Jaron Ennis in his next fight, let's just say I have questions on whether he's ready. Right? Let's remember, too, in addition to losing to Gervonta Davis, he also got outboxed by Keith Thurman, who doesn't fight that often. Right? It's not like Thurman was, sharp because he's been in the ring a lot. No, he wasn't sharp. He still beat Mario Barrios. Right? As I pointed out in the pre-fight video, Abel Ramos was a live underdog. Those are my thoughts on the fights. Let me hear yours in the comment section of this YouTube video. Thanks for stopping by.